Hello ladies and gentlemen, Adam Steele from Hot Pulse Studios here, and today you are hearing my voice through the Austrian Audio OC818. This video is going to be about this microphone and its little brother, the OC18. Let's check them out. So the OC818 and OC18 are both large diaphragm condensers. They are the first offering from Austrian Audio. As far as I'm aware, the team from Austrian Audio were originally the design team from AKG. There's probably a bit more to it, but as far as I'm aware, when the company changed hands and internal politics, now Austrian Audio are their own company. So the big selling point generally, before we get into funky features about these microphones, is that connection between AKG and Austrian Audio. So the original AKG 414 microphones and the C12 microphone, which is the kind of hallowed valve microphone to end all valve microphones, along with a few others, has a brass capsule that they call the CK12, and AKG stopped making them in favour of something that I think was easier to make and more affordable, and that was a long time ago. And so Austrian Audio, who are now the design team that were AKG, have decided to go back to high quality microphones. That does make them not cheap, but that also means that you get this lovely rich sound quality that's very difficult to capture any other way. So they've not just made a recreation of that microphone capsule, they've gone back and redesigned from scratch, which means they've got new manufacturing methods in there that didn't exist back when the CK12 was made. It's mounted on 3 points, which means that it's got kind of a shock suspension inbuilt there, which is very clever, makes for a relatively lightweight microphone. It's still got a bit of a good solid weight to it, but for good reasons, like solid metal housing and some very clever electronics in them. Now, the OC18 is cardioid only, and it has a high-pass filter that does 40, 80 or 160 Hz, and it's got a pad that either does 10 or 20 decibels of attenuation. Those features are also on the 818, and these two microphones are made in such a way that this one, which has a variable polar pattern, variable pickup pattern, which we will talk about much more in a minute, if you leave this in cardioid mode, then the two of them can be used as a stereo pair. Austrian Audio claim that they are that close to each other with the manufacturing tolerances here in 2020 that's doable, and you don't need to buy specific matched stereo pairs anymore, not for these microphones anyway. And I think that's great, because I tested these for a video that I've done about these monitors you see behind me, the Adam S2Vs, and I was able to use these as a stereo pair in the room, and it worked beautifully. So sound-wise, especially in cardioid mode, anything good that I have to say about the 818 also reflects on the 18. It's a great mic, it handles a lot of level, sounds sweet, but that is where the cool stuff about the 18 ends. It's cool. I mean, it's got this kind of shape you can see here where it's kind of flat, and then it doesn't go back very far, which also, aside from being very visually distinctive, means it's very compact. It means you can fit it into a lot of places. The flat front means I can get this right up against a guitar cab. And it sounds great on guitars, although it sounds even more great when you start getting into the variable polar pattern stuff. And that's where this one gets really clever. So it's got a slider on the front like a lot of the old AKG 414s do. So on the front of the microphone we can do figure 8, we can do hypercardioid, good old normal cardioid, omnidirectional, and a preset which we save. That's where it gets clever. So this has been in cardioid the whole time. You've been hearing this microphone. So I'm going to switch now to figure 8. This is how the microphone sounds on a vocal in figure 8. Probably still quite nice. Very good rejection on the sides, but not a lot of rejection at the back for obvious reasons. It's figure 8. It's capturing fairly equally. Hypercardioid is very directional. If I move off axis, that's going to get a lot quieter, whereas here that's a lot more, a lot more bright. Really good if you're using this in on a drum kit. Omnidirectional, and this is Omni. So omnidirectional does what it says. I can move around and it will pick up more room sound because it's not excluding anything, but at the same time, also you'll lose the proximity effect, which could be better depending on what you're trying to do. So I'm going to switch this back to cardioid. If you're just using the microphone as it is, that's where the possibilities end. But then there are 2 more possibilities. There's a hole on the back of this microphone, and you can plug a couple of things in there. First things first, you can plug in a pigtail there, and that pigtail will give you a second XLR out, which means that this front capsule gets an XLR out, and the back capsule gets its own XLR out. On the little cardioid picture on the front of the microphone, there's actually a kind of a darkened back cardioid as well, which when I plug that in, you'll get the 2, and what you do with that is you process that in your digital audio workstation. Now, I already recorded some heavy guitars doing this a little while back, and the reason this is really cool is that you can do multi-band, and then do in each separate band a different polar pattern. So you could have, for instance, omnidirectional on the low end if you don't want too much proximity effect, but then you could have cardioid in the middle if you want that tone, and then figure 8 on the top if you want a different top end, and you can play around with it. And I got some incredible punk guitar sounds using this like that. So you send into 2 preamps. I wouldn't like to call it a stereo signal that goes in. 2 channel is literally what it is. You'll use a stereo track in your DAW, whether it's Cubase, Pro Tools or whatever, and then they have their Polar Designer software, which then interprets the 2 signals and combines them how you specify. The good thing about doing it this way, apart from the multi-polar pattern stuff, which is very cool, is that if you change your mind at a later date, the original information is still there, so you can then go back and change it appropriately.
Easy mode now. Completely by changing the polar pattern on the Austrian Audio. If you didn't see the earlier half of the stream, I was recording the guitars with an SM57, but also an Austrian Audio OC818. And I had both sides of the microphone capturing to different channels. So what I can now do is completely play around with the polar pattern and make it omni, cardioid, figure 8. And I can do that separately for the low end, high end. I can split it up to 5 bands, which in this case seems a little bit overkill, but I've made the low end here completely figure 8 to get me that big proximity chugga thing, but have the high end much more omni, so it's not quite so piercing in your face because I've already got the SM57 doing the gritty thing. So yeah, now let's see how my guitars sound.
It's good to know that if you are processing in this way, doing the multiband thing does incur a little bit of latency, which, if you're tracking live, could cause a problem, but there is a 0 latency mode, which then turns it back down to a single band for the duration of while the 0 latency button is held down, which means that you can then work live and then afterwards mix with the whole multiband thing, which makes it useful again. The last thing, and I've yet to try this, is this. This is a Bluetooth dongle that goes in the back of the microphone where that pigtail went. So off camera now, I'm going to turn off phantom power to the microphone, install this, turn it back on, and then change. So I'm going to do that in 3, 2, 1, and there we go. And now the Bluetooth dongle is installed, and we can see it flashing blue, ready to be talking to a Bluetooth device like an iPhone, which is what I'm going to do in a second. It's probably worth at this point talking about the shock mount that it comes with, because these both come with either just a clip like this is on, which means you can get really close to something like a guitar amp, or they come with a kind of spider shock mount that's kind of flat and cut out at the front, so again you can get close to something like a guitar cab without bouncing off a big metal ring like you do on the old vintage style ones. Now the next thing I need to do is slide this over to preset mode, which is the furthest mode on the right, and then I need to grab my phone. But first, some tea.
Hi everybody, sorry to stop at the tea moment there, but I now have to say that the audio for the next section was messed up royally by me. Apologies. It turns out that the phone capture thing that I'll be using, that you'll see on the side, also messes up the audio in the capture software that I was using, which is not ideal. So what you'll hear now is me basically telling you what you can see in the phone app. None of this is the fault of Austrian Audio. This is not the OC818's fault. This is entirely the phone capture thing screwing up my stuff. On with the show. So you can see that I've now loaded up the iPhone iOS software, and you scan through for Bluetooth devices, and it finds it fairly quickly. And then it asks you for a serial number, which the serial number is actually the serial number on the Bluetooth device and not the serial number on the microphone. It takes a few seconds for it to load up, and you make sure you slide the slider on the front of the microphone all the way to the right, so it's got this pattern preset mode. And you can, as you can see on the screen there, choose any of the polar patterns or anything in between them. You can remotely change the pad. You can see me here absolutely shouting at the thing trying to clip it. And it does take a lot to clip these microphones even without the pad. When you engage the pad remotely, then you can put it in front of a jumbo jet and it'll be absolutely fine. You can then save that with a particular name. I don't know why you'd want a name because you can't see it. And then save it on the microphone. And that's really, really useful if you want something really particular, but you don't want to take the app or the Bluetooth dongle or anything out with you to a show. That stores it in the microphone without the dongle. So you just slide it over to the preset there without the Bluetooth dongle in, and it goes to that setting that you saved. Anyway, on with the show.
But yes, the vocal sounds on this are very clean, very clear, very nice. And you'll have heard the OC18 on drums, which I recorded at some point recently. I'll cut that in here.
I could show you some of the people in my life. It's driving me mad. Just another way to pass through the day.
These things can definitely handle a bass cabinet perfectly well as well. And you heard the punk guitars that I recorded multi-band with these with. And so yeah, they don't have a particularly strident high end. They're very clear, which means that they're not going to be too harsh. There's very little processing going on this audio. If you hear this voice, there is a bit of de-essing going on, but very gentle. There's a bit of compression, but nothing crazy. And that's it. That's my sound. So hopefully this has been of some use to you. The self noise on this is incredibly low. That's it. That's the noise. That's just crazy. I think it's measured at something like 9 dBA or something like that. The electronics in there are so well made. Now, the last thing to talk about is price. So, these at retail are not particularly cheap. Last time I looked, one of these was €999 for an 818, 1,800 for a stereo set. So you do save money by buying more, arguably. Yeah, and the 1.8 was €599 in euros, which roughly translates to something equivalent in dollars if you then include all your sales tax and everything. And that's not cheap, but then these were never designed for the lower end of the market, I guess. There are companies that do that and do it well. But right now, Austrian Audio are really trying to take the high market by making... In the high-end market, I would say these are very affordable for what the high-end market is. So if you could afford 2 of these instead of one, I don't know, Neumann, say, or one of the really high-end, AKGs, then you might be onto a winner in terms of value for incredibly high-end recording with low noise, really nice large diaphragm condenser sounds. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching, and if you found this insightful, give us a like. There's more videos like this coming out very soon, so do subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I hope you found this useful. I'll keep saying that. Thanks for watching. I'm Adam Steele for Hot Pole Studios, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Hey everyone, that might be the end of the video, but if you fancy carrying on this conversation, we have a Discord server. Link is in the description. We're also on Patreon, which is something you can really help us with. We also are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Hot Pole Studios. See you there.